Hezbollah threatens to reignite the north tonight. Israel continues to strike at the heart of the Iranian command, and the accumulated numbers of this war already show a scale that impresses even those of us who have been following every detail for days. Greetings, I'm Ari. Thank you in advance for the messages from everyone who has written to ask if we are okay. Well, thank God we are fine. I hadn't been able to record due to personal matters, and well, the truth is that the situation here in Israel is really complex. So let's go with the update for day 18 of the war with something concerning, and that is that in the last few hours, 3 very serious things have come together at the same time. A specific alert about a possible major attack from Lebanon and, together, from Iran tonight. New Israeli strikes. Israeli strikes against key figures of the Iranian regime, and a statistical overview that helps to understand the true scope of this war up to today. And that's exactly where I want us to start, with the hard data, because sometimes with so much news, you lose the real sense of proportion of what's happening. So please pay close attention to these figures. Israel has so far attacked 9,300 targets in Iran, not counting those attacked by the United States. There is talk of 45 targeted killings, 14 high-ranking Iranian officials eliminated, and 1,348 Iranian deaths. On the Israeli side, the impact has also been very strong. 57,095 alarms or sirens, 480 launches from Iran, 907 launches from Lebanon, 3,500 civilians evacuated, 19 dead, and 3,000 wounded. And if we broaden our view to the entire region, the chart also shows 13 U.S. bases attacked, 976 missiles launched by Iran, 2,176 drones, and 13 U.S. soldiers killed. Just from these numbers, it's clear that we're not talking about a minor escalation. We're talking about a regional, prolonged war with several layers happening at the same time. And that's the context. Now that we've reached day 18, let's get into the most immediate developments. The Israel Defense Forces warned today about the possibility of a major attack, a massive rocket attack by Hezbollah during the night. The assessment is that the terrorist group has intensified its preparations in recent hours. We need to understand that Israel's monitoring of the entire northern part of the country, the border with Lebanon, is really being carried out day and night, 24 hours a day. And this attack is mainly aimed at the north, although there is also the possibility of a coordinated attack with Iran, which would seek to reach central areas of the country, in a scenario similar to the previous escalation a few days ago, when nearly 200 missiles were launched in a single night in a combined attack by Hezbollah from Lebanon and Iran. Here in Israel, when the army launches an attack or gives a warning like this, it's not for sport. They do it because intelligence is seeing concrete movements. In fact, this time, they decided to alert the public in advance, precisely because last time they didn't do it, and that ended up causing rumors, anxiety, and of course, a lot of confusion. Now, the message was very clear today: more transparency and more preparation. Obviously, we have to keep in mind that war is dynamic. There might not be an attack, nothing may happen, so we can't now think that the statement was false. The matter is real, it's very true, and also very important, relevant. So there are no limitations, and it's actually better to inform the public. Northern Command is working to thwart those attacks with airstrikes right now, as I'm recording this video, and with ground attacks, surveillance on Hezbollah commanders, and other actions that obviously aren't being disclosed at this moment. We'll surely have updates on it tomorrow or in the coming days. Also, the local authorities have started warning the population. Since yesterday in Mate Asher, there was even talk of a possible time window for the start of the attack, and residents were asked to stay close to shelters and closely follow the instructions of the Home Front Command. There have even been announcements from the mayors of cities in the north of the country. They're talking about a time window between 7 and 10 at night, more or less, which will be exactly the local time when this video is being released. Well, and here there's a very important point to consider. In Israel, it's believed that Hezbollah saw the latest escalation as a success. not because they managed to deliver a devastating blow, but because they succeeded in creating anxiety and keeping a large part of the country on edge with every alarm. That's why the assessment is that they might try to repeat this pattern every few days. Not necessarily to change the course of the war in a single night, but to wear down the population and maintain a constant sense of threat, what we call psychological warfare. At the same time, the army reminds us that since the beginning of this current round of fighting, more than 500 members of Hezbollah have already been killed. And an important detail from the previous attack was also revealed. Hezbollah. They launched about 220 rockets and drones against Israel, but the Israeli forces managed to thwart approximately 2/3 of the planned launches. Before they happened, that is, at the moment they were getting ready to fire, hitting operatives, launchers, and firing zones. Of the nearly 200 rockets that were actually launched, only 2 hit, causing damage and minor injuries, and all the drones were intercepted. That means Hezbollah is still a real threat, of course, but it also means that Israel is breaking part of their operational sequence before the damage can actually happen. And that's one of the key points of the current moment. This war is not being fought just by reacting to the attack, but by trying to dismantle it before it even happens. And something you need to know is that here in Israel, attacks are happening daily. The alarms are going off in different areas. Before I dive in, I want to share with you the story of this vial, which amazed me, and I think you should know about too. This vial holds an unbelievable story that was unheard until now. Inside is earth from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, rescued by archaeologists after thousands of years of history were dumped as rubble. It is our opportunity to prevent history from disappearing. Start the new year with a personal connection to Jerusalem. Click the link in bio or scan the code to enjoy a special offer. The country, both day and night. We've really gone through these 2 very, very difficult weeks. Since the moment Hezbollah entered the war, it's been days and nights where they're really attacking daily. Meanwhile, on the political and strategic front, Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, issued a message today with a tone of total war. According to Netanyahu, Israel is operating inside Iran from the air with planes and drones, and is weakening the regime with the hope of giving the Iranian people the possibility to overthrow it. He also assured that he had a long conversation with President Trump, that there is cooperation between air and naval forces, and that Israel will continue to help its American allies, both with indirect attacks and with direct actions. And he added something that drew a lot of attention. He said that there are still many surprises and that this war will be fought with cunning. And while the Israeli home front prepares, the Air Force continued striking Hezbollah in Lebanon. It was reported that the organization's headquarters in Beirut was attacked, as well as other headquarters that were struck during the night in the Lebanese capital. 3 launch platforms were also destroyed in the Bekaa Valley region, from where the terrorists fire rockets toward Israel. Additionally, more launchers and ammunition depots that were intended to be used in attacks against Israeli forces and civilians were also hit. That means Israel is not seeing Hezbollah as just a border threat, but as a direct extension of the Iranian axis. And that's why it's attacking not only what is already fired, but also the infrastructure that could support new waves of fire in the coming days. Now, if we move to the Iranian front, this is where today's news becomes even more complex. First, the elimination of Gholam Sarah Soleimani was confirmed, who had been the commander of the Basij unit for the past 6 years. Under his command, the Basij led many of the main repression operations inside Iran, with severe violence, mass detentions, and the use of force against protesters. And here it's worth explaining something very quickly and simply. The Basij is not a minor force. It's one of the most feared structures of the regime. It's a branch of the Revolutionary Guard and was created as a supposed popular militia to defend the Islamic Revolution. But over time, it became a brutal tool for internal control. It has a presence in universities, schools, factories, and government offices. It is estimated to have a few 100,000 active members and about 1 million reservists. In other words, it doesn't just repress, it monitors, infiltrates, and disciplines. That's why, when Israel strikes the leadership of the Basij, it not only eliminates a military commander, but also hits one of the instruments of fear that the regime uses to control Iranian society. And the second major blow was that of Ali Larijani. According to the information released, the Air Force carried out a precise attack last night in the heart of Tehran, guided by military intelligence and special operational capabilities, leading to his elimination.
Del régimen iraní.
For years, Larijani was one of the most senior and high-ranking figures within the Iranian leadership, very close to the now eliminated Ali Khamenei. And after the elimination of Khamenei, he consolidated his position as the de facto leader of the regime and as one of the main architects of the war against Israel and against the other countries in the region. In addition, he is not only linked to political military coordination and the regime's international activity, but also to the repression of protests within Iran. That's why his elimination isn't just another news story. Among the 100 or so high-ranking Iranian political and military leaders who are said to have already been eliminated, this could be one of the most important eliminations for the stability of the system. Even today, it was recalled that there was a $10 million U.S. bounty on his head. And in all of this, Israel is not just trying to make noise, it is attempting to tear entire pieces out of the regime's command structure. But at the same time, something must be said honestly. Just because Israel hits hard doesn't mean Iran is going to collapse tomorrow or in a week. We have to understand that Iran has been preparing for a war of attrition for years, learning from American campaigns in Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Balkans. That's why it dispersed command, missiles, and even part of its nuclear infrastructure across multiple locations, some of them deeply underground. The underlying idea was to build a decentralized structure so that the system could keep functioning even if the military and political leadership were hit. Which is exactly what we're seeing right now. That explains why, despite so many attacks on military targets and high-ranking leaders, Iran keeps operating and keeps responding. The regional commanders have a certain degree of autonomy, and that allows the system to continue even when the center is under pressure. Now, that same decentralization also carries risks for Iran. Because when too many local commanders have room to make decisions, the chances of miscalculation and the possibility of a disorderly escalation increase. In addition, Iran has relied on large quantities of relatively cheap missiles and drones to overwhelm defenses and make the other side's response more costly. And even so, according to Israeli officials, that model has allowed it to keep fighting. That's clear. But it hasn't prevented very serious and severe damage. In fact, Israeli officials said something very relevant, that this is not a matter of weeks. It's a prolonged campaign to degrade the so-called centers of gravity of the Iranian regime. That is, their missile systems, their military industries, their nuclear facilities, and their strategic infrastructure. Many people say, well, no, that the United States and Israel were going to take down Iran. And well, you have to understand the dynamics of how wars work and how a country and a structure like the Iranian regime work from the inside. And we're not talking about a small country, we're talking about a colossal country that, as I said a moment ago, has been preparing for this moment for decades. So we can conclude that no one is assuming and no one is seeing that this war will be decided in 2 or 3 nights. What is being projected is a prolonged erosion that will take weeks, even months. And in the midst of all this, the propaganda front also appeared, the fake news. Iranian material from the Al-Mashari agency is circulating, falsely claiming that Iran has already eliminated several top Israeli leaders. Among them, the director of Mossad, the minister of national security, the commander of the Air Force, the head of the Internal Directorate of Military Intelligence, the head of Shin Bet, and even Netanyahu. In the video currently being shown on screen, you can see how they even display them with X's as if they were eliminated. All of this is false. None of these Israeli leaders has died, and this comes after the rumor that Netanyahu had been eliminated was also debunked. A fake news story that quickly went viral and sparked a lot of discussion for several days, generating all kinds of speculation. What does all this show us? Well, that the regime needs to fabricate a fictitious war to support its internal and regional narrative. Keep in mind that there are many Arab countries and even Iran itself where social networks and the internet in general are very controlled, highly supervised, and regulated, in the sense that the circulation of information from the West is not really allowed. The point is that when they can't show real achievements, they make up victories, invent casualties, and try to sell an image of success that doesn't match the actual facts. On these same networks, if you could access them, what would you find? The Tel Aviv airport completely destroyed, planes on the runway destroyed, the Shin Bet office completely destroyed, the Mossad office, which doesn't exist, destroyed. In short, the images they share on social media to encourage themselves coming from the Iranian regime. Well, they are simply part of the whole fake news media campaign, which they also invest a lot of money in. So it's important to understand that not everything happens in the sky or in the tunnels. It also plays out in people's minds, in perception, in propaganda, and in each side's ability to impose its own narrative. That's why I want to leave you a question for the comments. What do you think weighs more right now in this war, the military front or the psychological front? Let me know your opinion here in the comments. Alright, so let's continue, because images were shared. And the confirmation? A few days ago, Israel dismantled the naval headquarters of the Revolutionary Guard, which was used by high-ranking officials to manage operations and promote maritime terrorist activities. This is important because the naval branch of the Revolutionary Guard is linked to attacks against civilian ships and to transporting weapons by sea to allied terrorist groups. And with all the mess that's going on right now in the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, it's not just an administrative structure, it's a specific part of Iran's regional projection. And as if that weren't enough, there was also a report circulating that at least 300 members of the Basij militia had been killed in a wave of nighttime attacks inside Iran. The figure reported by Iran International was not officially confirmed by Israel, and that needs to be stated clearly. But if this information is eventually confirmed, we would be talking about a very serious blow to the operational capacity of one of the regime's most important internal tools. According to that report, the attacks hit multiple command and logistics centers, including facilities where hundreds of vehicles used for surveillance and protest repression were stored. In other words, it would not just be a symbolic blow, but concrete damage to the regime's internal control machinery. So if you put everything from today together, the picture is quite clear. Hezbollah is threatening a very tense night from Lebanon. Israel continues to attack the group's infrastructure and leaders in Beirut and in Bekaa. Iran is taking direct hits against major figures like Ali Larijani and the leadership of Basij. The regime is trying to compensate for its losses with grotesque propaganda. The question is no longer just about who hits harder. The question is who can endure more, who can better maintain their command capability, and who will manage to uphold their narrative before their own people and the region. My impression, seeing all this from here, is that today, day 18, leaves a very clear conclusion. Iran is not immediately defeated, but it is being hit in increasingly sensitive areas. Hezbollah can still cause damage, but it is also paying a very high price. Israel is acting with a logic of sustained pressure, knowing that this could still last a long time. And pay attention to what might happen tonight, because if that massive barrage that Israel has been anticipating from Lebanon finally happens, the next chapter of this war could begin in a matter of hours. Thank you for joining me. Subscribe to the channel. Don't leave without sharing this video and leaving your like. See you.